here's Faye from Faye's Parallel Stories, and today I'd like to talk about the 4 books that I read in September, which I all enjoyed. The first book I read on my Kindle, and that was Less by Andrew Sean Greer, which was published in 2017 and also won the Pulitzer Prize, so my expectations were adequately high. This is a book named after the main character, Arthur Less, who is a dwindling, mediocre, soon-to-be 50-year-old author who, in an attempt to avoid going to his ex's wedding, takes on pretty much any invitation he can find to go all across the world, to writers' retreats, little conferences, teaching gigs. So he goes to Paris, Berlin, Morocco, India, and it almost feels like a male Eat, Pray, Love without me ever having read that book. I still felt like that was kind of the vibe he was going for. The book is sometimes also classed as a sort of comedic novel, satire, and I'm not sure how much of that I got. It's very meta, with the main character being an author. That happens really quickly, and it is written really, really smoothly, but I couldn't help but think that maybe it was so positively received because the author and the main protagonist is male. Not sure. I've read some really good books, in my opinion, that are classed as women's fiction, and the plot is not altogether that different. Scorned by love person runs away, tries to find themselves, meets some interesting people on the way, and in the end has an epiphany as to what their life and their love life means to them. Being cynical here, I did think this was a good book, and I think I gave it something like 4 out of 5 stars because it was such a pleasurable and easy reading experience, but I am not quite sure I understand why it was received so well to actually win the Pulitzer Prize. If you've read this, share your thoughts down below. Let me know and convince me why maybe I'm not seeing the deeper message within. Then I had a great time participating in the Tome Infinity and Beyond Readathon, which had us read science fiction novels. The first one I read was Woman on the Edge by Mars Piercy, which I've talked before, so I'll try to keep it short and snappy. This was promising to be a science fiction feminist novel. It was written in 1976. I thought the themes in this were much stronger though, not so much for sci-fi, but just discussions on the meaning of gender and race and the treatment of psychiatric patients in the 70s. Our main character, Consuela Ramos, I believe, is visited by time travelers who hope that she will aid them in securing their version of the future. Only problem is that Connie is in a mental institution and thus feels quite powerless. This is at times a really dark and gritty book. The descriptions of the present day, I think, are very moving and make you really angry because this powerlessness that is given to, or rather the power that is taken from, the patients in the mental institution is really infuriating. At times I thought the future was depicted in a bit of a simplistic way, and I would have liked more out of that for a science fiction novel, but a really interesting one to read as a dated but not so dated science fiction novel. I also gave this 4 out of 5 stars, I believe, and really do recommend it. Then the next novel I went on to read, also in lieu of that readathon, is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. I always forget his name, which is the first part in this Themis trilogy, I believe. And we follow a cast of politicians, military, scientists in trying to uncover the secret behind a giant robotic hand that is found, and they soon discover that there's more than just the hand, and that all these different parts add up to something that might not be from this world. This is told this is interesting, yes, but also told in an interesting way, as we have almost exclusively interview format throughout this book, which makes it a really, really quick page turnery read. I did also find that it is far less emotional than I am used to in these trilogies where there's so much power play and different sides, and you're trying to find out who the goodie is to root for. Because of the interviews, I felt quite detached sometimes from the plot, but I do definitely want to continue reading this trilogy, which I guess is the best compliment you can give to a first part in a trilogy. Also 4 out of 5 stars for Sleeping Giants. I'm hoping the next one, which is already out, I think the whole trilogy is complete actually by now. I'm hoping that the author succeed in making me feel a little more for the characters and not just be a reader who is so far taken aback just following the plot. And then the final book that I finished in September is I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. Maggie O'Farrell has written many a novel which I also own but haven't read, and after reading this non-fiction book of hers, I really want to pick them up. This is subtitled as her 17 Brushes with Death, so as expected, we get 17 different little chapters of her life and how they have impacted her life. This is blurbed as a memoir. It doesn't feel like a memoir in my opinion. I think it feels like 17 short stories about life-changing moments. They are all really different, and I was fearing that it would be a bit repetitive reading these different instances, but they include so many different people, so many different definitions of near-death moments. She doesn't just almost die in all of these chapters. Difficult to explain without giving too much away. Just read it. I'm thinking I'm going to give this 5 out of 5 stars because I found it so moving, and it really made me think. It sounds a bit trite maybe, but it really made me think what my version of this sort of book would be. What are the most impactful moments in my life? Which are the moments that were a close call? Which were the moments where I was the most scared? But also which moments changed me for the better or gave me more of a lust for life? All of this sounds really I don't know, rehearsed and emotional, but I did think this was so good. Yes, very emotional, but what's wrong with that? My favourite chapter, I believe, was the last chapter. Do I want to give away what it's about? It's not her brush with death that she talks about, and I thought it was a really beautiful ending, and it made me shed a tear. So those were the 4 books that I completed in September. I'm really excited for October because I will be attempting Victober, which is very far out of my comfort zone, not books that I typically read. September was far more stereotypical Fae reading. Let me know what you thought of these books, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye!